Philosophers talk to our times, a future history. And then there are, of course, those great books of science fiction which we never move beyond, and never move beyond in terribly interesting ways. Not just boring science fiction that we're stuck, caught up, endlessly repeating. No, I mean things like Frankenstein, of course. And the strange thing for me about Frankenstein is who's the monster. Not just who's the monster in terms of the book. Obviously, it's Victor Frankenstein. But actually how it describes something about the way technology shifts and changes our brains so that we are already always the monster. Always waking up into a world that has apparently changed when we were not noticing, as if we were some sort of revived creature, arriving, opening our eyes fully formed, and realizing that we were alive in a world that was different from the one. Into long stupor of death or whatever. So we live in a brain that what? In the words of Marx, won't have changed much since Paleolithic times, but it has to cope with a world that is so much more complicated. And I say it hasn't changed much. Of course it's changed an awful lot, because it rewires itself. It rewires itself as bicycles give way to cars, and cars give way to God knows what, into the internet. We live then in a brain that is constantly having to change how it understands the very conception of what it is for itself to be alive. And so that it feels that it's just a botched amalgam of all the past that it has had, all the worlds that it has lived in. If you're of my age, you've lived in the world. I can easily remember the world before computers took over. Absolutely, straight away. Would I go back there? Not in your Nelly. Disgusting place. But I could easily remember it. And I can understand when people say, oh, I wish I could go back to the 1970s, but perhaps without all the racism and not Jimmy Savile on the television, and, well, that was the 1970s, so you don't mean you want to go back to the 1970s. The point about all this but the point about the wanting to go back is like Frankenstein's monster wanting to be alive again, genuinely alive, a true human. Because you're wanting to go back to that time before you endlessly had to reinvent what it was to be have your brain, to rethink it, to re-examine it, before you woke up and suddenly realized that you were just an animated corpse and living in a new world that you had to uncover and behave in. And of course, this is the great thing. I've said it before, and I'll no doubt say it again. For me, about things like AI. AI is very badly named if you think it is an artificial intelligence. It is incredibly well named if you understand it as one of the purest forms of artificializing intelligence, where all other versions of the monstering of the human mind probably involve gains, for instance mass literacy, which is not Victorian mass education, 150 years old. Some certainly involved, if not losses, kind of parallel moves. The entire way we think about journeys, we've cut them down so that they just become a way to get from A to B, and we live in a world where we can just jump on a plane and go somewhere. I don't know that hugely expands what we can do, but I don't think it contracts it either. It turns it into a dead space between two different worlds. But AI is, of course, one of the great exceptions. It very clearly rewires human brains so that they are less intelligent, more lazy, less likely to do stuff. And this is serious in the sense that that actually changes what we are, and this is serious in the sense of what we are has been in fluxful. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, or even before, as our brains have had to rewire and rewire again. And AI says, well, you can stop rewiring now. And so it utterly artificializes the very conception of our intelligence, so that we are the ones that become artificial, as we plug ourselves in and expect it to be able to perform tasks that one day we expect it to perform. And of course, that changes how you understand those tasks. One of those annoying things that sometimes happens, this is just a personal gripe on the world of AI. I read a few days ago that AI had proved something in maths that had not been proved in 120 years. But yesterday I discovered it wasn't a proof, it was a disproof. Disproving in maths is relatively straightforward. You need one counterexample. Proving is much harder. My point is that it warps how we understand what is going on, so we always describe everything in terms of what it can do. It is not that it is Frankenstein's monster in this exchange. Oh no. It's that it monsters us. We become the living corpse animated into a different world, no longer quite understanding who and what we are, simpletons. Because it it entices our brains to do what they do so well, nothing. And to rewire themselves so that it is terribly simple. And the gambit, of course, is that if you believe it's reality, then the world feels simple. But of course, I think I've said it before, but again, it fits on the Frankenstein's feel. AI intelligence is botched intelligence, and botched in two ways. It's like a corpse stitched together from all sorts of other bits of knowledge, and turns our brain, therefore, into such an animated corpse of knowledge stitched together. More than that, animating that knowledge together is sort of an abstract version of what humans understand, how humans understand their own thought seen from a corporate point of view. So what AI does is that it brings everybody down to the corporate standard of humanity. You can see it most on all those personalized ads that they send you that are terribly irrelevant. I get all sorts of ads for things that I'm really thoroughly uninterested in. And that's because what's actually happened is that the algorithm has predicted things that, for my taste, other people would like also. But I'm not others, so it doesn't quite work that way. But that's not really what of course it's doing. What it's actually trying to do is to train me to like these things and to entice me into its world. Because the entire thing has become a monstering process. It's very hard, you see, to produce genuine artificial intelligence, but it's pretty easy. Any storyteller will tell you to entice humans into a world where they believe something is true, and they shift their brains around to really believing it is true, to turning themselves then into a monster for themselves, where they feel reborn again, shifted and changed. And that's very clear what all this stuff is doing. All those personalized ads aren't about selling you stuff so much as changing you into the person who will buy that stuff. And likewise, there is no surprise that artificial intelligence is pushed by corporations because it is the perfect corporate thinker. Corporations always behave like zombies, like monsters, in the sense that corporate decisions are always different from real decisions. They're not the kind of decisions that one person would make, an individual taking a risk or not taking a risk. They're a wider, less risk-averse strategy where certain rules and certain criteria matter more than external truth. Which, of course, is what this world of AI is animating, but animating in us. So, as it thinks, as a corporation would think if it was translated into a human being, so it turns us into such shadows of ourselves, shifts and shades, or wants to entice us into believing that it is true with these big claims. And the big claims are all part of that. As I suspect it's sacrificing our entire environment in order to create it. It means it must be important, mustn't it? The biggest why, therefore, any people in a position of power would want to do that is very straight and self-evident. The internet was very dangerous for old systems of power in that it allowed you to get knowledge from all sides. That's actually dangerous. It's dangerous for power. It likes to control. Control? it likes to be caught up in, I'm going to put it that way, the systems of knowledge. It's just real power and knowledge go together. They're caught up one within the other. And if you never know where people are getting their knowledge from, what then? And traditionally, the way governments have coped with that is to flood the knowledge with stupid stuff, to be honest with you. Stupid stuff that actually renders people harmless. They're not going to have a revolution if they're too busy looking at crystals, for starters. And AI completes that process by allowing you to take over how and when they think. It's not just that you can predict it, it's that you mould it. That's why it's so much like Frankenstein's monster, and we are the monster. We are our brains become reformed, reworked, restitched, and animated differently from how they had once been. And that's the entire point of it. In a sense, I think that's why we can never leave the story of Frankenstein. That if you read the book, it's one of those books, the world is full of them, where you read the book and go, oh, it's alright. It's alright. Style's not great. It's okay. But the idea that somehow technology has consequences, and consequences for us, is of course an idea that can never go away. But more than that, the idea that we are caught up sympathizing with a monster, not just because he is the innocent party, although he does kill a bad child, but also because we really live that experience every day of our lives as we are shifted and changed in what we are and how we can be, as we wake up and the world has gone. And AI is, of course, the latest dance on that, the one that seeks to make a monster of us all. Our problem is, what do we do about that? Do we want to become monstered or not? It's a real choice. It's very clear the world, as in what I mean, the majority of Western settled democratic opinion is moving against artificial intelligence because they've over-egged the pudding. And at a time of generalized global collapse and entropy, they've gone too far. They're like Victor Frankenstein. They've pushed this too far, so it's too obvious, so we're clearly aware that we're being monstered. Although I have to say, with my cynical head on, the track record of humans stopping themselves being turned into Frankenstein's monster in the last 200 years is very bad. It usually happens, which was of course the gamble for data centers. So, what I guess I would say is, if we keep on making it mattering, we might stop this move happening. Let's hope so, shall we?